Hey everybody, it's Andy. Just a quick heads up. We are working away in recording new shows that will be released soon. There is a lot going on, from tax reform to President Trump's trip to Asia to the naming of a new head of the Federal Reserve, and I promise we'll get to those topics soon. Until then, please check out a repeat of the very first show we did on why we're doing a podcast and who we're all about. Enjoy. Welcome to CFTC Talks. I'm your host, Andy Bush. In this episode, we're going to briefly discuss what this show is about, why we're doing it, why you should check out the upcoming podcast. By the way, there's a disclaimer about the show at the end that's important for you to hear. But let's get to the obvious elephant in the room first. This is not going to be an infomercial on how great the CFTC is or the U.S. government. We can't. There's a law against it. No propaganda and no self-aggrandizement. Also, for cost, and I know you're thinking about this, for cost, this show is inexpensive. How do I know? Just take a look around and see how many podcasts are being done. It's exploding, and all you need to do to create a podcast really is your cell phone. Pretty easy. It's what we call low barriers to entry. So let's just get those two out of the way. Now, why do this show? The purpose of CFTC Talks is to provide information about commodity markets, futures trading, and other information about conditions in this country and abroad that affect the markets. It's pretty simple, but wow, does that cover a lot of territory. So first, let's get to this. Who are we? The Commodity Futures Trading Commission, or CFTC, is the independent federal agency whose mission is to foster open, transparent, competitive, and financially sound markets. By markets, we're talking about the risk transfer markets. And what the heck are those? We're going to start out with the basics here, so just hang with me. Then we'll get to some really cool stuff about future shows, so just hang tight. You know, like a lot of things in business and finance, these markets developed because of a problem. Simply put, farmers had a problem with prices going up prior to harvest when there wasn't enough food, and then prices going down after harvest when there was a lot of food. How could farmers smooth out these prices and deal with this problem? Well, to do this, a new way of selling their grain needed to be developed, a way for farmers to sell their grain at different times of the year. They did this by developing a very simple contract to sell the product or grain in the future at a guaranteed price. Who would buy it? Well, how about a baker who wanted to guarantee he had supplies of wheat for an entire year and not just during the harvest? This, ladies and gentlemen, is what makes a market. Someone who wants to sell, a farmer, and someone who wants to buy, a baker. Now, this happens all the time in the economy. What was unique about this type of contract was that it was for delivery of grain, not right now or today, but in the future. It solved the farmer's problem by taking the price risk for the farmer out of the fall when prices were always falling due to all that supply, and spread it out over the entire year when there wasn't as much. And the same occurred for the baker. It took the risk from high prices during most of the year when supplies were low and spread it out throughout the year. Both were happy as the farmer transferred the price risk, which he didn't want, to the baker, who was glad to take it on. This is the essence of risk transfer markets. Now, today, these are known as futures, swaps, and derivatives markets, but the core is the same. Risk transfer from one entity that doesn't want it to someone who does. So what are all the commodities involved, or what are all the markets involved? A wide range of ag products, from cotton to corn to cattle, and then energy like oil and natural gas, metals like copper and gold, financial products like interest rates, stock indices, and foreign exchange. The full range of these markets is really pretty large. It's pretty impressive. But the bottom line is that farmers, ranchers, producers, commercial companies, municipalities, pension funds, and others use these markets to lock in a price or rate. This helps them focus on what they do best, which is innovating, producing goods and services for the economy, and creating jobs. That's super important. And guess what? Somebody has to make sure these markets operate fairly and competitively. So the CFTC aims to protect market users, their funds and consumers, and the public from fraud, manipulation, and abusive practices related to derivatives and other products that are subject to the Commodity Exchange Act. Phew, that's our job. We watch and police the derivatives markets or risk transfer markets for various abuses. We also seek to lower the risk of futures and swap markets to the economy and the public. The CFTC works to ensure these hedgers and other market participants can use the markets with confidence. All right, now I know at this point you're saying, okay, great, Andy. Now we know what the CFTC is and does. Why should I listen to this podcast? Because we're going to talk about and get information on all the things impacting these markets. This is the fun and cool stuff. We're going to talk about a wide range of markets, but also we're going to talk to a wide range of experts in these markets. We're going to get people from generally 5 major groups. Now, the first group is other government agencies and offices. Why would we want to do that? Well, because their data and staffs provide insights into markets like energy and ag markets. Anyone watch what happens when the USDA releases their crop reports or the EIA releases oil inventory reports? Okay, enough said. Next, the exchanges and the clearinghouses where trading activity occurs and trades are cleared. These are some of the people we want to talk to. This will inform us on how the actual trading or risk transferring works and any problems that may be developing. Now, we'll also want to talk to authors and professors who cover this space, and those that are experts in technology as well. If you think about it, technology has become such an important part of our changing world, not only in finance and markets, but also for the entire U.S. economy. So we're going to want to learn and inform about that. And lastly, we're going to want to hear from the market participants, the folks that use these markets. It's really important to get their insights into how, when, where, and why they use the markets and how they function. So taking a step back and wrapping this all up and to remind you, hey, the purpose of this show, CFTC Talks, is to provide information about commodity markets, futures trading, and other information about conditions in this country and abroad that affects the markets. It's about getting knowledgeable people to talk about fun and interesting stuff. Pretty radical for a government agency, but kind of cool. I'm Andy Bush, and this has been CFTC Talks. Thanks for listening, and please check out the upcoming podcasts. I think you'll enjoy them. But wait, there's more. Disclaimer time! The CFTC is providing this information as a public service and is neither a legal interpretation nor a statement of CFTC policy. Reference to any specific product, service, trademark, manufacturer, or service provider does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by the CFTC. The CFTC is not liable to any consumer or third party for any direct, indirect, incidental, consequential, special, or exemplary damages or lost profit related to the use of the information provided or referenced in the podcast. Selection of guests on the podcast does not imply an endorsement of any particular individual or entity. Many individuals and entities provided similar services to those of the guests. The views and opinions expressed by the guest in the podcast are their own and not specifically endorsed by the CFTC. Moreover, the information provided in this podcast should not be construed as investment advice. Consumers should rely on their own inquiries as to the accuracy and relevance of the information incorporated and referenced in this podcast and assume the entire risk related to its use. The CFTC is providing this interpretation of market trends solely to inform the public of a framework for projecting future outcomes under different scenarios. If you have any questions concerning the meaning or application of a particular law or rule administered by the CFTC, please consult with an attorney.